They went to hunt the wolf that killed their livestock, but found a man who didn't know he'd changed. The first sheep disappeared during a thunderstorm, and no one thought much of it. Storms spooked livestock. Maybe it had broken through the fence, maybe it drowned, but then the second vanished the next night, and the third was found torn open, its insides strewn in the mud like discarded rope. That was when the village whispered the word, wolf. It hadn't happened in years, decades, even. The mountains had grown quiet after the old hunters passed on, but now something had come back down from the high slopes, something hungry. By the fifth night, after the blood of a calf stained the straw and the creature left claw marks deeper than any dog could make, the men gathered at the edge of the forest with torches and rifles. Among them were Elias, grizzled and quiet, whose hands had once gripped the throats of bears; Tomas, tall and superstitious, with a flask of bitter brandy for courage; and young Merrick, no more than 20, eager to prove he was not afraid of dark woods or darker tales. The moon hung swollen and low, caught in the bare limbs like a watchful eye. The trail was easy to follow. Blood, prints the size of dinner plates, branches broken too high for any normal beast. "This ain't no ordinary wolf," Tomas muttered. "Too big, too smart." "Doesn't matter," Elias grunted. "We put it down just the same." They moved deeper into the trees. The night was silent, not just quiet, silent. No crickets, no owls, no rustle of small prey. Just the crunch of boots, the occasional drip of dew, and the strange feeling that they were being watched. And then they found it. Not a den, not a lair, a clearing, cleansed of snow, though the air was still freezing. In the center lay a figure, naked and curled, shivering violently, a man. Merrick rushed forward first, but Elias caught him by the shoulder. "Wait." The man stirred, his eyes opened. Not yellow, not glowing. Human, confused. Where am I?" the man asked, his voice raw. "Why am I cold?" His face was covered in scratches, his hands caked with dried blood beneath broken fingernails. His limbs trembled not from fear, but from the agony of muscles pushed past human limits. He looked at them with no recognition, no aggression. Merrick stepped closer, slow and careful. "Are you hurt? Do you know who you are?" The man looked down at himself, horror dawning in his eyes. "I was walking the ridgeline. There was a noise. I remember pain. Then, dreams. Teeth. Running. Screaming. I thought I was dreaming." Elias finally lowered his rifle. "You weren't." Tomas crossed himself. "Sweet God. A skin changer." "No." Elias shook his head. "Accursed man. He doesn't even know what he's done." The man's face crumpled. "Done? What did I?" "Animals," Elias said, gently but firmly. "Livestock. You've killed." "I didn't." "I couldn't have." He looked at his hands again. The blood had soaked too deep to deny. "I didn't know." Behind them, a howl rose, distant, but unmistakable. Another one, not human. And then another, closer. "He's not the only one," Merrick whispered. "No," Elias said, "but he's the first who turned back." They couldn't leave him, but they couldn't bring him back either, not like this. Not when the villagers still grieved their lost animals and sharpened blades in the dark. "We'll hide him in the old hermit's hut," Tomas said, "till we figure this out." "And what if he changes again?" Merrick asked. Elias looked at the man, shivering, broken, half a beast and half a victim. "Then we pray we're there when he does, and we pray he remembers who he was before the wolf." Because in the deep forest, something was stirring. The hunt they had begun was not over. It had only just begun. Part 2, The Man Who Returned from the Hunt. The old hermit's hut lay beyond the frozen stream, half collapsed and moss-eaten, forgotten by men but remembered by wolves. They wrapped the man, whose name, he stammered, was Yakub, in wool blankets and gave him water, bread, and firelight. His eyes remained wide, haunted by dreams that smelled of iron and pine and meat still warm. He wept that first night. Not because of the cold, or the pain, but because of what little he remembered. "I chased a child," he whispered to Merrick, "in the village, a little girl in a red shawl. I think I liked it, not as a man, as something else." Merrick said nothing. He simply pressed his back against the cabin door and didn't sleep. They told no one back in the village. The official story was that the trail had gone cold. that they'd found signs of a den in the cliffs and would return when the snows melted. But the wolf attacks stopped, and that was enough to quiet suspicion, for a time. Yakub healed slowly. The scratches faded, his ribs stopped showing, but the shame didn't leave his eyes. Elias returned every 3 days, bringing meat and supplies. Tomas brought salt and silver, just in case. Merrick stayed the longest. "I think he's still human," Merrick said one night by the fire. "He thinks he's still human," Tomas muttered. "There's a difference." But Elias watched the way Yakub kept a distance from them all, the way he jumped at owls hooting or flinched at the sight of blood on meat. Something inside him was human, but something else, something old, lived in him now. And then, on the next full moon, they found Yakub gone. Tracks led east, into the low valley, toward the sheep fields. Merrick was the first to follow, rifle in hand, guilt in his chest. "Maybe we should have told the village," he said aloud, knowing no one could hear. "Maybe this is our fault." But it wasn't slaughter they found. It was protection. Yakub stood between the flock and a true wolf, massive, silver-backed, eyes burning like coal. His back was to Merrick, his arms raised, trembling, as the beast growled and circled. Yakub wasn't fully changed, not quite man, not quite wolf. His face still bore a human fear, but his shoulders were broader, his nails longer, his legs bent in a way that no normal bones allowed. But he didn't strike. He snarled. The other wolf lunged, and Yakub met it, not with thought, not with malice, but with instinct. The fight was brutal. Merrick could barely follow the blur of limbs, the snapping of teeth, the crunch of ribs under monstrous strength. When it was over, Yakub stood bloodied but alive. The other beast lay broken at his feet. He turned to Merrick, panting. "I didn't want to hurt it," he said, voice thick and low, "but it would have killed them. I couldn't let it." Merrick didn't raise his rifle, he simply nodded. That was the night they realized, Yakub wasn't the enemy, he was a wall. A dam holding back something worse. Back in the hut, Elias stitched the wounds. Tomas said little. "You'll change again," Elias said quietly. "Every moon, maybe more." "I know. And you'll need to learn control. Hunt what needs hunting. Guard what needs guarding." "I will." "Can you?" Tomas asked. "When the blood calls?" Yakub looked out the window at the stars, at the wild dark beyond. "I don't know," he said, "but I remember who I am now, and I want to be a man." And sometimes, Elias thought, wanting was the most human thing of all. But far away, deeper in the mountains, others stirred. Not cursed men, not reluctant monsters, but things that had never been human at all. And they'd smelled Yakub's scent. The hunt was coming. To be continued. Part 3, The Ones Who Never Forgot the Taste of Man. The first sign was the silence of birds. Then the cold, not just winter's chill, but an old, unnatural cold that seeped into the bones and whispered of ancient teeth gnawing at the world's edge. It came from the east, from the broken-tooth ridgelines where no sane creature climbed and even the bears gave way. The villagers never spoke of that place without crossing themselves. And now, whatever had slept there, had waited, was awake. Yakub felt it first. The moon wasn't full, he wasn't shifting, but something deep inside his skin began to itch, something primal that no memory or manhood could bury. His nose twitched, his breath shortened, he felt watched. "They're coming," he told Elias one dawn, standing barefoot in the snow outside the hut. "I don't know how many, but they're not like me." "How do you know?" Yakub's lips drew back in a grimace that wasn't quite a smile. "Because I'm afraid of them." The next day, a boy vanished from the outskirts of the village. His bones were found in the woods, arranged in a spiral, clean, stripped of every scrap of flesh. The villagers howled for justice. They sharpened pitchforks, burned torches, locked their doors. And they asked the old question, "Where are the hunters?" Elias, Tomas, and Merrick returned to the village not as men hunting wolves, but as men hunting something worse. Yakub stayed behind. "They can't see me yet," he said. "Not like this. They'll panic. And if I shift without control." Merrick had gripped his forearm. "We'll send word, when it's time." It didn't take long. 2 nights later, something screamed in the forest. Not an animal, not a man. A voice trying to be both. It dragged along the trees like claws on bark. The dogs in the village howled. Horses kicked down their stalls. A woman fell to her knees in prayer before she knew why. The three men lit torches and went back to the woods. What they found wasn't a wolf. It stood upright, taller than a man. Its limbs were wrong, too long, too thin, bent backwards like a spider's. Its face was a mask of stretched fur and black eyes that saw too much. Its mouth never closed, filled with teeth that never stopped moving. It didn't snarl. It laughed. Merrick fired. Tomas dropped his torch. Elias shouted, but it was already on them, moving between the trees like a shadow made of hunger. They were going to die. Until something bigger hit it from the side. Yakub's howl shattered the trees. Not a man. Not anymore. This wasn't the half-shifted, half-afraid Yakub they'd seen weeks before. This was the other side of the curse. 9 feet tall, silver-backed, with a mind behind its eyes and vengeance in its heart. He tore into the creature with terrifying precision, like a man who'd once studied how to kill and now had claws sharp enough to do it. The thing shrieked and bled tar. It fled. Yakub gave chase. 3 hours passed. When he returned, covered in black blood and limping, his eyes were still wolfish, but clearer than before. "They're scouts," he said, voice deep and broken. "Just the first. The rest will come. They remember this valley. They remember the taste of man. I smelled it in their thoughts." Elias nodded grimly. "Then we prepare. The village needs to know. They'll want to kill you." "Let them try," Yakub said, "after I save them." And so the hunters became the hunted. The man who had once stalked sheep by accident now defended the valley with tooth and claw. Every night he changed. Every night he fought what came crawling from the mountains. The villagers learned his name. Some still called him Beast, but others whispered Protector. Because not all wolves hunted men. Some hunted monsters worse than themselves. But across the range, beneath black stone and bone-deep snow, something older rose. It had no name. It remembered a world before fire. And it had felt its child die by Yakub's hand. The hunger was returning. And it would not be stopped by a man who only thought he was a wolf. To be continued. Part 4, The Thing That Fathered the First Howl. The old ones in the village spoke of it only in fragments, tales passed down in candlelight, whispered in the dead of winter when the wind sounded like it carried voices. A creature that came before wolves, before men, before the split. It was not a beast. It was a direction. A pull toward blood, toward the raw, red marrow of the world. They called it Varkosh, though even that name was only a shape, an echo of the noise it made as it hunted in the night. It hadn't come down the mountains in generations. Until now. Yakub stopped sleeping. Each time he closed his eyes, he saw it. Not clearly, not as a man sees, but in flashes, smells, movement, impossible geometry. Teeth that grew inward. A body that swallowed the forest when it walked. The sound of trees dying just from its passing. And beneath it all, a feeling he could not shake. It knew him. Not because he had killed its child. But because it had made him. He told Elias, told Tomas, even told the priest, Father Anric, who arrived from the monastery with incense and old Latin charms. None of it helped. The boundary between Yakub and the wolf was breaking down, not just during the full moon now, but in moments of rage, fear, even hunger. He would see his hands shift before his eyes, hear his heartbeat echo through the trees. "You're losing control," Tomas warned. "No," Elias said, watching Yakub throw his head back and sniff the wind. "He's changing forms, that's not the same." But Yakub knew the truth. This wasn't evolution, it was a countdown. A clock he couldn't read. And when it hit 0, he didn't know what would be left. The warning came on the last new moon of winter. A shepherd stumbled back into the village with blood on his hands and his tongue missing, bitten off to stop himself from screaming. He collapsed at the chapel doors, eyes rolled back, lips trembling. They found only one word carved into the frozen bark at the edge of the forest, clawed so deep the tree bled. Son. That night, the village chose to fight. Barricades, fire pits, silver nails embedded in fence posts, salt rings, bells tied to every door. But they knew it wouldn't stop Varkosh. Only Yakub might. So he went into the woods alone, his rifle slung across his back, more symbol than weapon, and his coat wrapped tight. He didn't plan to come back. The forest was wrong. It tilted in directions it shouldn't, sound moved sideways, the snow melted where it should have been deepest, birds lay dead in the trees, and the sky above twisted like something unseen was breathing just behind it. Yakub found the tracks, not paws, not hooves, just impressions, like a massive body had slid across the world, leaving dents in reality. He followed them to a cave that hadn't existed yesterday. Inside, it was warm. And dark. And wet. The walls pulsed like a throat, the air smelled of rotting teeth. And in the center, curled like a spider in the heart of its web, sat Varkosh. It was larger than any myth. Its skin was bone, its mouth never ended, its voice was wind through a broken jaw. You return, it said, though its lips did not move. Little howl, bright blood, broken man. Yakub trembled, his bones shifted without his command. I'm not yours, he growled, though he could feel his fingernails blackening. You are mine, Varkosh said. I planted the seed in your grandfather's blood. It bloomed when you were bitten. It sings now. No, Yakub whispered. I chose who I am. And then he shifted, not in fear, not in pain, but in defiance. He became the wolf, fully, truly, for the first time on his own terms. And lunged. They say the battle shook the trees for miles, that birds fell from the sky and the moon turned red for a heartbeat, that a howl rose so loud it cracked windows in the village. And then, silence. For 3 days. On the 4th morning, Merrick found him at the tree lean. Yakub was human again, barely, covered in blood not his own, eyes sunken, limbs shaking. Is it dead? Merrick asked. Yakub looked at the sunrise. No, he said, but it bleeds. The mountain was quiet again, for now. But every month, Yakub walks the forest edge. Not to hunt, but to warn. Because Varkosh still stirs in the dark, its voice still calling to those who feel the pull of the wild in their bones. And one day, when the moon cracks and the snow turns black, it will come again. And the man who thought he was a wolf will have to prove once more that he is something more dangerous still. To be continued. Part 5, The Whisper Between the Howls. The village slept. At least, it pretended to. The people shuttered their windows and stoked their hearths and prayed over door frames. But no one truly rested anymore, not since Yakub walked out of the forest with Varkosh's blood steaming on his skin. He had returned changed, not in the way that frightened them before, fangs and fur and eyes that glowed in firelight, but changed in silence, in stillness, the way a man looks after he's seen something too large to explain. Something that knows his name. Yakub had not healed. His body bore wounds that no poultice touched. Black veins like tree roots spidered out from his ribs. His right eye flickered with gold when he blinked. When he spoke, his voice sometimes echoed faintly, like something behind him spoke at the same time. Elias noticed it first. You're tethered to it, the old hunter said. A piece of it stayed behind. Yakub didn't argue. He simply said, I know. That night, he dreamed. In his sleep, he stood on a plain of bone. Beneath a sun that pulsed like a dying heart, wolves circled him, not the kind he had known, but those that never learned to kneel. Ancient ones, burnt-furred and blind-eyed, they did not growl. They watched. And from the horizon, Varkosh's shadow stretched long across the earth, though the beast itself never appeared. Then came the whisper. You broke the bloodline, you stole the howl, so now, you must bear the curse whole. He woke with dirt in his mouth and claw marks in the walls. Merrick and Tomas argued whether he should stay in the village. Father Anrik wanted him gone, even Christ turned the possessed away. The priest spat, fingers trembling over his rosary. But Elias said no. He's the wall that kept the mountain from walking down and swallowing us whole. Let him decide. Yakub did. I'll stay, he said, voice rough, but I won't sleep here. I'll build my own place. So he did. A cabin deep in the treeline, neither part of the village nor truly of the forest. A liminal place, where no paths led, where the trees grew strangely bent, and wolves circled without fear. He began to change, differently. not just under the moon. Sometimes in anger, sometimes in joy, sometimes when music played too softly at the village feast. And each time, it was partial. A hand that twitched with fur, a throat that echoed when he laughed, a heartbeat that pulsed like a drum long after the fire went out. He wasn't becoming a monster. He was becoming a bridge. Then came the girl. 12 winters old, eyes sharp, name, Zora. She found Yakub by accident, or so it seemed. She wandered from the village, chased a fox, crossed the frost line. But when he stepped from the trees to guide her back, she didn't scream. She looked up at his shifting face, the gold-flecked eye, the teeth not quite hidden, and said, "I dreamed of you." Yakub froze. "You were standing between the moon and something that crawled on no legs. You kept it from eating the stars." She had the mark. Yakub saw it when she lifted her sleeve, a birthmark, shaped like a curling spiral of claws, just like his, just like the one that had burned black on his chest the day he fought Varkosh. He knew what it meant. The curse, no, the legacy, had passed to her. Over the next months, the wolves changed. They no longer attacked livestock. They no longer fled fire. They circled the village like sentries. They watched. And sometimes, when the wind was right, they howled in harmony with Yakub. The people began to understand. He was not a man cursed to become a wolf. He was a man becoming what the wolves once were. Before Varkosh twisted them, guardians, not predators, memory, not madness. But deep in the east, the bone plain stirred again. Not Varkosh, something older still. Not a creature of flesh, but of song, the first scream of prey, the echo of the first death beneath stars. And it had heard the silence where Varkosh once fed. It did not care that Yakub had survived. Only that he had dared to stop the hunger. The girl, Zora, began to dream of the thing that hums. Of a tower made of howls stacked like bricks. Of a song with no end. And Yakub knew, their time was short. He could hold the curse. He could hold the hunger. But he could not hold the sky when it cracked. So he began to teach Zora. How to move without sound. How to speak to the wolves without words. How to be a shape the darkness cannot swallow. Because the next thing to rise from the mountain would not bleed. Would not bargain. It would sing the world undone. And only the girl who dreamed of the broken moon, and the man who stood between howls, could answer its call. To be continued. Part 6, The Song That Calls the Hollow Sky. The sky split. Not with lightning, but with silence, a sound so absolute it rang louder than thunder. The birds fell still. The wolves whimpered and crawled beneath trees. Even the river froze mid-current, its flow stuttering like a breath held too long. It was the sign Yakub feared, the prelude. Not of Varkosh. Of something deeper. A memory so ancient it had no name, only instinct, the fear of being seen by something that fed on stories, not flesh. Zora woke screaming. But not in pain, in tension, like a string pulled too tight. Her arms were carved with glowing marks, not cuts, not wounds, glyphs, written in a language no one taught her. "I dreamed of the tower," she whispered, "once the fever passed. It's not made of stone, it's made of us." Yakub sat at her bedside, cloaked in silence, fingers twitching with the urge to change. He'd shifted 4 times that day without intending to. His body was no longer obeying him, it was obeying something else. "They're singing," she whispered, "but not with mouths. It's not a song for ears, it's for the roots." "The hollow sky," Yakub said, like it hurt to name it. "The wolves have howled about it for generations. I thought it was myth." "It's waiting," she replied. "It doesn't want to destroy the village. It wants to erase the story of the village." Yakub shivered, not from cold, but from memory. The fight with Varkosh had left him scarred in the soul, and somewhere inside that wound, the hollow sky had begun to bloom. That night, a mist rolled in from the east. It didn't touch the ground. It floated just above it, as though reality had lost its grip on gravity. People who walked through it didn't return. Their bodies did, but their names were gone. Not their voices, not their faces. Just their place in the world. Elias's wife stood on the porch, stared at him, and asked, "What are you doing in my yard?" Marek's brother wept at his own reflection. unable to remember why it wept back. The village was unraveling. And in the forest, Yakub stood at the center of a ring of wolves. All stared north, where the mist pulsed and sang. Low and wrong. The wolves whimpered in unison. They remember, Yakub whispered, the way it ended last time. He looked to Zora, standing barefoot in snow that no longer melted. You ready? She nodded. I dreamed of fire tonight, she said, but it didn't burn, it remembered. They walked into the mist. Man and girl, wolf and echo, memory and future. The world bent around them, trees leaned away, time slowed, sound reversed. And ahead, standing tall in the clearing where no stars shone, was the tower. It was not made of brick or stone. It was built of names. Every rung of its impossible height whispered the identity of something it had devoured. It sang in voices stolen, it spoke in truths forgotten, and at the top, a shape floated, not beast, not God, but something made of regret and silence and the hunger of things never born. It turned to them. And Zora gasped. It has your face. Yakub saw it too. Not his face now. But the one he wore before he was bitten, before the wolf, before the blood. His first self. You gave up your past to stop Varkosh, the hollow sky said, its voice like bones being alphabetized. I found it drifting. I wore it like a cloak, and now I wear you. You're a parasite, Yakub snarled. I am the end of stories, it replied. The wolf howls to be remembered. I come so that no one remembers the howl at all. It opened its arms. The tower began to unravel, threads of history falling like dead stars. Zora stepped forward. She raised her hands, and the glyphs along her arms glowed like dawn. Then I will become a story you cannot swallow. And she sang. Not a human song, not a melody, but a howl. One that echoed from every wolf around the clearing. From Yakub's throat. From the roots of the trees. From the bones beneath the snow. It was not a song to be heard, it was a song to become. And as it reached the hollow sky, the tower trembled. Names began to return. Elias's wife remembered his smile. Marek's brother remembered his own name. The river began to run again. The birds sang. And the hollow sky cracked down the middle. You remembered, it whispered, stunned. And then, as the tower collapsed, Yakub leapt. His final shift. Not wolf, not man. Something in between, something new. He struck the shape that wore his past. And tore it from the world. When it was over, only the clearing remained. Zora stood in the ash. Yakub was gone. No body, no sound. Just a low wind that carried a single word. Remember. In the years that followed, Zora grew. She lived between the village and the trees. She became a whisper, a guardian, a dream the wolves protected. And sometimes, on the coldest nights, when the moon hung cracked and the sky trembled, she would howl. And the wind would answer. Not as a wolf, but as a man who once became more than a curse. A story. The kind even the hollow sky could never erase. End of Book I. Book 2, When the Hollow Sky Bleeds Again, coming soon.